Hey y'all, welcome back to the newest Team LoCoFit Roundtable, hosted by myself, Lauren Conlon, training director Ryan, and then assistant coaches Jillian, Karina, and Lauren. So thank you guys for joining us once again, and we're going to dive right in. So the first topic that we're going to cover today is how long to spend in an off season, or even like a maintenance phase. We get questions about this really all the time from clients. Sometimes it's a question of, I want to know because I want to know exactly when I can get back on stage again, or when's the next time I can diet and lose weight, or it's just a curiosity like, hey, like I'm starting to, people might reach out to us, inquire, and we say, hey, let's do an off season, and people say, well, how long? So I'll give my first take. I mean, there's so many takes that we can go with this, which I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. But first and foremost, like from the example that I just used, so if somebody's inquiring to work with us, right, and we say, hey, we should do an off season, and someone says, well, how long? Well, it really depends on how you're responding. So that's number one. We're not magic fortune tellers. We can't see how you're going to respond, how your body's going to act. But pretty much what I like to say is like, hey, let's just start with 3 months. Like, let's see where you're at in 3 months. And then I can give a way better estimation at that point. Okay, yeah, we need another month, or no, we're going to need another 6 months, because everybody's metabolism is in a different place and everybody's goals are different. So if you're looking to add as much muscle mass as possible, you need a 2-year off season. I don't know. So it's going to be hard to tell. But usually giving people shorter kind of goals as far as like, hey, let's at least do this for 3 months and then we can make a better estimate, because never want to lie to people. That's not what we do here. We don't promise things in a short turnaround time when they shouldn't be promised. So that's my take. And now everybody raise their hand first. So who's going to raise their hand first?
I'll go. Okay, so I wrote down a couple of things here, and Lauren, you already kind of touched on one of them, which if somebody wants to go more in depth on like your goals in the off season, I think that's a great place to go. I'll go ahead and talk about how important it is to know the past dieting history of the client, because and also with that, a lot of times clients will come to us and they will know that they maybe need to go through a reverse diet, but the second that they start to see those scales start to creep up, they're like, yeah, I was just wondering when you think that we could start cutting again. And I'm like, it's been 2 hours, not yet. And so the past dieting history is going to be huge in this, because if you have recently come out of especially if it was a pretty restrictive diet, that's also going to be kind of telling of how long we kind of think it's going to be. But again, I'm never going to come out and be like, it's definitely for sure going to be this amount of time and then we'll be good to go. Because if I promise that, even if it sounds good in my head, and we get to that point and the person is just not in a place to cut yet, then I'm the asshole and that's not our job here. So we're going to be realistic, how the body starts to respond, because especially with those that have been a little more extreme and dieted a little more recently, their body's going to respond a little differently than somebody that maybe started to creep their calories up before we got to them. So it is totally person dependent, but I just wanted to point out that past diet history is huge, and to not get too antsy, I guess, to start back into a cut, because it is going to take time, and we'll talk about some of the reasons why it takes time, but that's kind of my take on that topic.
Yeah, I think I've been on kind of like both sides. I've taken like 3 months in like an off-season phase, and then I've also taken the past year off. And I think kind of to piggyback off what Lauren said, it does depend on how the client is responding, and you kind of have to kind of cross that bridge when you get to it with a lot of clients. You can't just say like, oh yeah, for sure, like in 5 months we'll be ready to prep. That's not really how it works for everyone. But on top of that, I think it also depends on where they're at with their mentality towards dieting and their relationship with food as well. Because I know for me, coming out of my most recent prep from 2018, I was ready for the off season, and I was kind of ready to be done dieting, because it was kind of like I emptied my tank at that point and I had nothing really left to like push. And to be going back into a diet only 3 months after that, I was definitely not in a place where I wanted to, or where I felt like I was in a good place to just, be back on the strict diet. So we also have to pay attention to how the client is in their day-to-day and where they're at, what their life looks like. before really deciding that it's time to prep.
Yeah, so I mean, with most things that we discuss, it's all context dependent. What is your goal in the off season? Do you need to make very specific changes to look better on stage? Do the judges give you specific feedback on how much to grow, what to bring in? Did you find yourself having a worse and worse relationship with food the deeper you got into a diet, and maybe your off season is just to focus on when you feel normal around food again? But again, I think that everyone covered it very well. For minimum off season, 3 months is a really good number, but I think after 3 months, it's just kind of like, how much more does that specific client need? Do they need to build more muscle if the stage is their goal? Do they just, I mean, is their life suited to do another diet? But yeah, you guys covered that really well. I don't really have much to add.
I do have one more thing to add just quickly. Even if somebody has been in an off season for a while, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're mentally ready to cut again. I think that you kind of touched on that, but for example, like you could be in an off season for 6 months, or you could be doing some intuitive stuff, but then to try to go directly into like, say, a contest prep, it can be totally different. So you're switching gears 180 there. So just because you think in your head, like, oh, my calories are high enough, like I can go ahead and start this prep. That's a big shift, and it is okay if you can't just drastically flip like that. So maybe you're not necessarily ready for the rigidity needed to start the prep, but you are ready to start being a little more diligent with tracking your carbs or tracking your protein or whatever it is, and ease into that. So your off season can look a bunch of different ways. It doesn't necessarily only mean bringing the calories up, but it could be like a prep before the prep and things like that. So
yeah, and just like to share a personal story is that it took me like 4 years to really commit to doing a contest prep diet again. Last time I was on stage was in 2013, and we started dieting early this year. So a lot of people say that the longest they take off is 1 to 2 years, but I've seen people have to take, both mentally and physically, more than 3 years, and that's okay too. Definitely just do whatever is best for you, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, and I think realistically, we have to be kind of upfront with clients as well, if they are needing to put on more muscle mass. So I feel like a year off has kind of been kind of like what people think as the magical number for like taking a year off of competing in order to build muscle mass. But for a female especially, it's going to take much longer if you have nothing really to start with to put on enough muscle mass to really be competitive. So we have to be, as coaches, kind of honest and blunt there with setting those expectations for clients and what they should expect, what timeline wise.
You want to add anything, babe?
Nope.
No?
No, you guys are good.
Yeah, I think that they're okay. What?
Nothing. Jillian had a good point there. That's really all I was going to say too, was off season for adding muscle, especially for natural females. And just in general, a lot of people underestimate what they can do in like 10 years and overestimate what they can do in a year. So if you want to be successful at something of this caliber, just lifting for 10 years and like really truly changing your body composition over that time frame, that's going to be like what actually stands out to you and the judges and your lifestyle and what you actually want to achieve. So don't think that you can just do it in a 3-month off season. So.
And we covered this last time, so if you guys haven't listened to the last episode, go do that, and how getting leaner isn't always the answer. And really just talking about the progress that people actually need to make to get the physique that they want, whether it's on stage or a lifestyle client. Most people want to look a certain way, and that has more muscle, right? And when I say more muscle, I think a lot of people go, no, I don't want to be that muscular. Yeah, you do. If you're telling me that you want to look like this certain person, that person has more muscle than you, and muscle looks a lot different on everybody. And I'm not saying that you need to be a female bodybuilder if you want to add more muscle. I'm talking about a few pounds, but that might take several years to accrue in the correct places, right? So I think a lot of people might shy away when we say that, and they're like, no, I don't want that much muscle. I'm not saying a lot. I'm just saying that in general, if you actually want to have a semi lean physique that has, you have curves, but you also have some density to you, that is going to, take time. And I can't remember who mentioned it, but somebody, I think it was Lauren, on the mental aspect. Yeah. Like I've been a year now removed from competing. And in order for me to get as lean as I need to get on stage, I know exactly what I need to do. And I have zero interest in doing that. I think people need to be realistic with that too, because we hear people say one thing as, clients, oh, I want to do this. And then their actions say otherwise. So if I were to say, oh, I'm going to do a contest prep, my actions wouldn't line up with that, because I'd probably be pretty adherent, but I might not be spot on, right? And I have clients who say that all the time. Oh, I really want to diet. I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. And then each week they're not coming up adherent, and they're deviating from the plan. It's why you're saying something that you're not actually following through on. So you need to be in the proper place to actually do that. Yep. Next question. Do you need variety in your diet? And I think this can go honestly both ways. I think this is an interesting topic that we can all kind of, dive into. But I would say that honestly, you need variety, but then at the same time, you don't need too much variety. So from one perspective, yes, you need variety. Just from short kind of just talk on, gut stuff. So basically, you have bacteria in your gut. Those bacteria produce enzymes. The enzymes are what digest food. So if you have now been on a super, super restrictive diet with zero variety, you're going to have killed off the bacteria, and then you don't have those enzymes. So that's when people start eating food again they haven't eaten in months. They're like, oh my God, I have all these food intolerances. No, you just didn't eat that food for 3 months. Your body doesn't have the enzymes to produce that because you killed off those bacteria. So in that sense, yes, having variety is very important. Now, I will say the other thing, though, is having too much variety can just be mentally very taxing on people. So I like to think of variety in the sense of like, the larger scale, like, yes, we want variety in the diet, but we want kind of some consistency and less variations on a week to week. Like every week, you can kind of switch things up, but like within that week, have some consistency and less variety, because it's going to be a lot better mentally for you to actually just prepare food and just be able to eat and execute off of that.
Yeah, so I brought this up just because I think that people get a little carried away here. The truth of the matter is that as much as I would love to say that we know a ton about the gut and how it functions, how it works, we really know next to nothing. We have a lot of good assumptions and a lot of good implications for future research, but we don't really know anything. So I kind of wanted to point out the fact that not only do you need to eat foods that, like, yes, obviously you enjoy, you also need to be eating foods that your body enjoys. So I think that this kind of goes an easy example, and I'm actually going to be getting into this a little more, so I'm excited to share this with you guys when I dive a little deeper into this FODMAP research. But that's one of the big things that we hear about in the gut world is this elimination diet. FODMAP diet is actually evidence-based. There are great uses for it. So here's the thing, though. People think that it's supposed to be, 2 to 4 weeks at max. And the reason that most people say that is because they're afraid that you're going to starve off all of the good bacteria and you're going to ruin your gut diversity. And the less diverse your gut is, the worse off you are. But in reality, if you shit your brains out every time you eat avocados and you realize during the low FODMAP diet that that's what's happening, then maybe just don't eat avocados and you're going to be fine. So I think that there's definitely extremes here. No, you don't need to eliminate everything, but if there's something that doesn't sit well with you, it's not going to jack up your gut to the point where you can't function. So another thing that people like to get all hot and bothered by is fiber. So there's actually some research suggesting that in patients with constipation, fiber was not good, and removing all of the fiber actually took care of their symptoms. So that's not to say that fiber is the devil and that you should not eat it, but just be wary of the fact that a lot of the research done on fiber is essentially shifting the participants' diet from a trash diet of standard American to adding vegetables. So obviously they had great results because they're just not eating garbage can anymore, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was because of all the fiber. So you just have to be kind of careful when you are sifting through some of this information. And I don't really think that there is a perfect answer here, like Lauren kind of stated, and we don't know a whole lot, but I would just say do what is working for you, and you will know. I posted something the other day about your body is smart. It will tell you if something is working or not, so listen to it. And it should really be that simple, obviously, unless you have some complications and things like that, underlying issues. But for the most part, that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, and just to expand on what Lauren said about like the research
Which one?
Lauren, I'm like, did I say your last name right?
You kind of cut out, but it definitely sounded okay. So
It's blonde. Just say blonde.
Lauren. Just what she said. I actually tried to do a presentation on the gut microbiome and like the optimal diet for the gut microbiome in Dominic D'Agostino's lab here at USF in molecular pharmacology and physiology over the summer.
Name dropping.
Lecture summer series thing. And I was like trying to do all this research, and I go to Dom and I'm like, there is really nothing conclusive. Like, we really don't know anything. And I ended up not doing it because I didn't want to like say one thing other than like, we still have a lot to learn. So yeah, basically just finding out what foods sit with you best. And, you know, when you're not exposing your gut to certain foods, just know that your microbiome gut flora is going to suit itself to the foods that you eat. So your gut isn't going to have the bacteria to break down all the new foods yet. So that's one thing I also worry about when people completely cut out foods and then they try to introduce it and they have a negative reaction and they're like, oh, I can't eat this for the rest of my life. No more dairy ever. And it's just like, no, like you can probably work it in and, you know, kind of wean it back in. But obviously if you never eat dairy and decide to go eat a whole gallon of ice cream, it's not going to sit with you well. But
Shocking.
What?
It's shocking. But this is dairy is a really good example. Gluten is another really good example because now there have been these people who have made their careers off of vilifying certain foods and they're claiming to be gut health experts. And really there's not enough information for us to know really if that's accurate or not. And so I would say probably less accurate. The more extreme the claim, just know that it's probably not very accurate. But so for example, like I have a client who, you know, oh, gluten bothers me. Okay, well, when are we eating this? How are we eating this? And so I was like, listen, like, you know, I don't care if you eat gluten or not, but I don't want you to have a reaction every time you eat something that has gluten in it. And you will if you cut it out most of the time and then you have it. So what I had her do is, hey, let's have 3 small servings of gluten for the entire week. Guess what? She's fine. She feels great. So now we're going to do that for a few weeks. And then, oh, maybe we can add it, you know, either a bigger serving, whatever. It's not that I want her to eat gluten. Like, I don't care, but it's more of the fact that like, there's going to be tons of food groups in different just foods that you're eating. And if you ever want to be able to go and eat out and eat something and not feel like complete garbage afterwards, the number one way to do that is to have small amounts in your food. So gluten's in a lot of things, dairy's in a lot of things, and I'm not telling people to just scarf down gluten and dairy 24/7, but if you're having an issue from it, it's because you've cut it out. And in order to bring it back in, you're going to have to do small things. When I say small, it's like, hey, 3 small servings a week. Like, that's it. Like, not trying to test it. Don't have it every day. Don't have it in these huge boluses.
With that, Lauren, that was an awesome point. And I also wanted to say the importance of going into those meals. So like if you instruct your client to have 3 servings of gluten per week, making sure that the client is going into that feeding like as parasympathetic as possible. Because if you go into that meal and you're like, this is going to jack me up, this is going to rock my world, it probably will. So go in, chill the fuck out, take a couple deep breaths, really get pumped up for that bread, and you will probably be fine.
No, literally, that makes so much sense because I remember in my undergrad, I went through like phases. Like first I was, it was gluten, and then it was soy, and then, you know, I have all these stomach issues, and I just have a weird stomach anyway. So I just have, what's it called? Cramping and stuff from stress and anxiety. It's not the food, it's me. So I would attach me. Why am I like this? Anyway, but I would attach these like issues to the types of food that I was eating. So if I was eating something that I didn't know what was in it, I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt my stomach. And then I would have stomach pain and be on the floor for an hour. So that makes a lot of sense too. So you can't go into these meals thinking like, this is going to hurt me. Oh my God, what am I doing? And then you're just going to create that issue for yourself.
My gut, like my skull, is made of steel, so I don't really have any issues. I eat
That's not
gluten.
true. You don't do fake fiber at all.
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay,
Ryan
so
cannot
besides a
have
fake
animal-
fiber that was made up, I can pretty much eat about anything.
Yeah, Ryan does not do too well with inulin.
Yeah,
No.
but
Oh.
for to talk about like the subject that we're on, I've eaten a wide variety of food for my entire life. I mean, I've probably eaten less fast food since I've known Lauren than I did growing up, but I don't have any food restrictions. Dairy, gluten, whole wheat, white bread, whatever it is, beans. I don't have any issues eating whatever I want for the most part. So I think that's just from being a fat ass most of my life. So
Yeah, having a wide diversity of options is going to be helpful. Obviously there's specific situations that you need to pinpoint stuff, but that's why, great coaching and consulting comes in handy. And obviously we can't pick apart everybody's issues on a podcast per se. We can definitely talk about FODMAPs up in the future. And I will be having Gabrielle Fundero on my YouTube channel. I'm going to do like an interview with her in the next few weeks. And she's really, really awesome and somebody who actually uses evidence-based stuff for gut protocols. She does not like being called an expert, so I won't call her a gut health expert. But she has her PhD and she is just somebody who's really well-versed in the literature and works with clients. So be on the lookout for that.
can you call yourself an expert if there's really nothing to know about the subject?
I mean, yeah, I guess, right? Like, she's like, I'm a non-expert.
I'm just kidding. She's smart.
No, she's super legit, but yeah, she's like, don't call me an expert. And then, so no options mentality. That's going to be our last topic. It's kind of more of a brief one, but I think it is important. It's something that all of us have dealt with, and something that I will utilize with clients as kind of a mindset, trick, I guess you could say, when things are getting pretty challenging. And I think that we do talk about flexibility a lot, but I want people to also know that there are times where you have to be a little bit more rigid, and there are times where you have to have this kind of no options mentality. And that is really the only way that you're going to get through stuff. And that could mean diet, that could mean training, that could be all the stressors that you're taking on at work, that could mean leadership positions within school. I mean, there's so many different factors, and I think everybody here can relate to that in some aspects. So yeah, this is, flexibility is great, but sometimes it's, hey, there's really no option and we need to get this done and we simply have to execute on it.
Yeah, so I can definitely relate to this right now because when it comes to my current contest prep diet, I do have to have a no option mentality, because as much as I'd love to be one of those girls who can like have 8 grams of cookie butter and be fine and move on with their day, I cannot. Like, I just think about the jar the rest of the day and consume the entire jar. And not everyone is like that. But there are people like me who just need to say, hey, like for these next 8-12 weeks, I just need to make that sacrifice and not try to be flexible or not try to fit that in, because then I'm essentially just teasing myself and making it harder on myself. So like for me right now, it's peanut butter. Like I can't have a serving of peanut butter on the restricted macros I'm on right now without wanting to take an extra lick. And if I know that I'm going to set myself up that way by having one serving, I'm just going to take it out, because I'm not going to give myself even that option of messing up there. And so that is also something I have to use with clients who say like, hey, I literally just can't have one serving here. And for right now, for our short-term goal of fat loss or whatever it is, we just need to make our environment a little bit easier for us to succeed and cut it out.
And that's what I wanted to really hammer, that this is not a lifelong thing, right? This is not, the goal is so that you never have peanut butter ever again. But I think a lot of people really misunderstand the level of body fat that people are typically pushing past to get very lean is very physiologically draining. So when you're already very drained on a lot of different levels, you're not really as rational as you would like to be. So there's literally 2 types of people. There are people who, I have clients who, I'll have 8 grams of cookie butter. And if anybody knows what that is, that's a fourth of a serving. Okay. Like they literally have it. That's like the best part of the day. They love it. They move on. No issues. Right. And then there's other people like Karina, like myself. I just get to a point where it's like, this is literally not worth it, because the entire jar of peanut butter can just become, like, the serving can become the entire jar very, very easily. And no new habits are built during the end of a deficit. Okay. Like it's just, you're just trying to ride out what you have going on. Now in the off season, that's something that we're going to work back in a stepwise pattern, because if we would keep that out forever, then you're going to develop some kind of weird food issues around it. But the last few weeks of a diet, I have no problem telling people like, hey, this has been an issue several times. Just cut this out. We don't need this in our environment. It's just negative. Sorry, Jill.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I would literally, I guess it's with some foods, I would just decide, oh, I'm not going to buy it, because if I have it in the house, why am I going to have it in the house if I literally, like, if it's going to set me up to have, like, weird macros? Like, I'm not going to try to fit weird shit in. So I would rather save my money and not buy it. So I find myself talking with clients about this a lot, just kind of explaining it in a way where this is all temporary. And, you know, while it may suck for a few weeks if you have events or if you have dinners to go to, or if you like going out to dinners, I kind of explain it in a way where, you know, that food is going to be there. I know you're a foodie, but all of that's still going to be there when you're done with the diet. So that short-term satisfaction isn't really worth it if you have this longer-term goal.
I don't have a whole lot to add because, like Lauren says, this is kind of like a to the point topic, but just like she had mentioned, stepwise on the way back up. So maybe at the end of your prep, you decide to take out peanut butter. It might not be the best idea to go buy 3 jars of like your favorite flavors to like test them out after the show, because you will eat all of them. I have actually done that one time. It was just once, but I did do it. So maybe
fuck you, nuts and more. Is all I gotta say. Okay,
Dude,
it is so good.
Fucking,
So good.
the honey white. I don't even. It was fake as shit, and I loved it. But you can.
Ryan's like, y'all are crazy.
It's like, it sounds ridiculous to say it out loud. But anyways, as going stepwise up, so maybe you start doing with like single serving packs, and then you kind of move to that. Stepwise on the way down as well. So like when you decide to commit to a prep, that doesn't necessarily mean like, I'm going to cut out this, and that. No. So I usually will do okay with peanut butter and literally even avocado, just because I do like fat. So that tends to be the thing that I struggle with towards the end. But I'm okay with it at the beginning. And then there's definitely a certain point where I start to notice where like, I'll put peanut butter on something and then like I'm taking an extra bite, and it's at that and I'm making that face and and at that point and I'm doing that. Oh my god.
This is the selling point for the YouTube, just so you know.
I know, I'm like,
yes, literally. If you want to know what we're talking about, watch the fucking video. But there's always a certain point where I start to notice myself doing that, and then at that time I might remove it from the diet. But that's usually with not so much time left that I have now restricted myself of a certain food for months and months. So I just wanted to keep that in mind too. Like, just because we're bringing up this tends to be the one food that's an issue for most competitors is the nut butters. So that's why we're bringing it up. But certainly if you are one of those people that can handle it, because I know that there are people that can, by all means, great. But if not, then don't be like ashamed of that you can't have it in your house. This is a physiological thing as well, and your body is trying to survive. So don't get wound up about it. We can add it back in, and
Yeah. I also just thought about, but it also makes me think about, like, you know, what you said about like collecting the foods that you want post-show. Mm-hmm. And I have like 4 packs of Oreos in my closet right now. I didn't get them when I started prepping. They were there before. It's just like, but I'm like, they're sitting there and I'm not like tempted by them or anything. I haven't touched them since I bought them. It was like buy 3 get 1 free, by the way, Target. Anyway, but it kind of makes me think about those habits a lot of competitors do have, where they're kind of like hoarding all these snacks for post show. And I think that just makes the process harder on you, because you're giving yourself these things, these fun foods to look forward to or pick on, when in reality, it's probably just going to make you hungrier, and it's just going to make the process harder for you.
In reality, you're not going to pick on them. You're going to eat them all. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So it would be better just to like block that out and kind of just keep your blinders on, rather than just surround yourself with all this food that's just going to make you remember how hungry you are. So that's
probably
just
do a whole topic on just
that.
Yeah.
You want cookie butter?
No. Okay, Rye, what were you going to say?
So basically on the, what did we call this, a no option mentality?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're passionate about something that you're doing and you're actually committed to seeing it through, you're going to figure out a way to get it done. And that's anybody that is serious about anything and like actually has committed to a process. So people that say they're going to commit to something, they're just not going to have the same ability to wade through diversity. And I'm not saying that what all these girls have experienced in different aspects, you're going to come across adversity and you're going to slip up. The slip ups happen, but you have to figure out a way to work around them. And when the slip ups happen, you work around it and pivot and figure out, okay, what do I do next? Because you can't fix what you just did. So you have to move forward and see where you can go from that point forward. So one of the examples that I always use with training and competing for powerlifting is there's going to be times where you're uncomfortable and there's going to be times where things don't go your way, even in training. So one of the small examples is a year or two ago, I was walking out a really heavy squat. It was the last heavy squat day of the training cycle, and the rack was like too high. I like stumbled out of the rack. I took like a horrible walk out, and everything was just like terrible. And for a split second, I was like, oh shit, I need to re-rack this, put it back in, like start over again. And then in my head, I'm like, no, screw that. Just calm down, breathe, like let's work through this. Because on the day of the meet, there's going to be things that are not going to go your way, and you're going to have to respond. And if you don't respond, you're going to fail. So that's kind of when you have to dig a little bit deeper inside yourself and like accept the uncomfortable feeling and just get it done at all costs. But even with the food topic, the great fiasco, the popcorn fiasco of 2013 with Lauren, she, what did you do? You overate popcorn by like twice, 2 or 3 times a serving? Lost your shit?
No, so anybody, I've said this story before, but it's just definitely worth mentioning again. So I was a week out from nationals in 2014, and this was the show that I ended up turning pro and winning the overall. So it ended up working out. But the week out, feeling good, looking good, and I'm going into the weekend. And I'm about to do, start, peak week, etc. I was super out of it. Obviously, been dieting for way too long, like basically like 2 years. And so I go to the store. I had to pick up a few things from Whole Foods, and then I'm just looking through the aisles. I'm like, I have a little bit of carbs left, and at this point I had only ever really eaten the popcorn that was like the low calorie popcorn. So I was like, oh, most popcorn must be low calorie. So I'm looking through all the bags. I must have looked at like 30 bags of popcorn. You know what I mean? So I somehow put the macros of one bag onto another, and I bought this smaller one thinking that it was the better macro popcorn. Go home, I'm studying because I was in school, and I'm just eating. Bad idea. Terrible idea. So I'm just eating it, and then I'm like, oh, whatever. Okay. And I'll just keep studying, and then I'll go to sleep soon. And then I'm like, I feel amazing. This is not good. Like, I clearly ate way too many calories to be feeling this good. And it was not like, 30 carbs or whatever I thought it was. I look at the package and I was like, it was horrendous. Like, I don't know where the fuck I got it. It was so bad. So I'm texting him because he wasn't here. I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, just, you and Lane will figure it out. So, this is like my 10th show, about to turn pro. I'm super embarrassed. I'm like, so I ate this. And so basically we moved it to where like it ended up, it was actually my refeed numbers that I was supposed to hit in a few days. So we were just like, we'll do that today. We'll go to the other numbers. We course corrected, made it work. And obviously it worked out pretty well. But yeah, it's definitely one of the funniest and most.
But to bring that full circle, she made a huge mistake and was able to admit that she made a mistake, talk to her coach about it, and figure out the game plan forward. So not upfront and honest about what's going on with yourself and with your coach or your training partners, whoever you're working with or whoever's helping you, then you're not going to be putting yourself in an advantageous position to get it done at all costs. You're making excuses.
Yeah. So. For sure. So yeah, no options mentality, super important, you guys. Thank you for tuning in to this week's roundtable. If you've not checked out our previous podcast, go do that. We are on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Also, if you've not subscribed to the Team LoCoFit newsletter, do that. So you can go to teamlocofit.com, go to the top, hit subscribe, and you'll put on the list, and you'll get a free MetCon every Sunday nights for MetCon Monday in your inbox. And then every Wednesday, we put out an educational article. So thank you guys so much for listening. Please let us know if you have any questions. Hit us up. We're always open to, why did I say hit us up? Okay, I'm going to let myself exit the conversation. You know where to reach us. Go do that.